I was kind of late to getting to the first season. I did mostly like it, and you'd think that would get me to jump on the second season closer to when it came out. That did not happen. But here we are now. Legend of Vox Machina Season 2. A quick overview on my thoughts on the first one. It was fun and enjoyable, but the story was, well, at least initially, a little bit generic. It got a little bit better on the tail end as it got more focused. I couldn't stand Scanlan, and most of the other characters were pretty well utilized. Second season is better in some ways. Ooh, intrigue. Scanlan's definitely better. I think if I were to describe him in season 1, he is a guy who says a D's nuts joke in response to literally everything. I would say in this season, he is a guy who says a D's nuts joke in response to about 50% of things, and then about half of those times, somebody gives him a dirty look and he's like, ooh, sorry. So, he's not, they haven't 180'd him, but he's better. He's more tolerable, and I'll take that. So, the first season had a big focus on Percy, who takes more of a back seat here, which I think makes sense. He got his focus before. This one gives us, well, actually, this one doesn't have a clean central focus for the season overall. This one is doing much more, let's take an episode or two to highlight these characters. Let's highlight Grog for a couple of episodes. Let's highlight the twins for a couple of episodes. Let's highlight Keyleth for an episode. And this one feels a little bit more distributed. And in some ways, that's good because it gives more of the characters a chance to, have their moment in the sun and shine a little bit. But it also gives the season less of a build, and it probably doesn't help that the season kind of ends unresolved. We came into the season having a problem. There's these massive dragons. What do we do? And in this season, they go about collecting stuff that they believe will help them defeat the dragons, and they kill one of them. There's 3 left. So this season as a whole feels more like an assemblage of side quests, which I guess makes sense depending on how closely that they are sticking to the original Critical Role D&D campaign that this is based off of. I actually don't know how closely it's holding to it, but it feels like it's holding close to that kind of structure. This session, we're going to give you a chance to get a focus, and the mission is we go off and find this thing. Cool, did that. Cool, now we do this thing. This person from your character's past, now they come up. And that's fun. But that kind of loose structure works much better when you aren't scripting the whole thing in advance and you're giving a structure for the freedom of your players to react the way they're going to. When you're actually sitting down to write something out altogether, these kinds of narrative tactics stand out a little bit more. It's kind of the nature of adapting something from one medium to another. And it's not just a matter of it being a primarily audio medium, the original Critical Role episodes, but also just the fact that you structure stories in a different way when you are trying to give the wiggle room of your players than you would if you're trying to just tell a linear story. And that clash feels a little more evident here than it did in the first season, where it all kind of built towards the stuff to culminate in Percy's story. Here, it's not all building in the same way. Now, that might be resolved a little bit more if we get a third season. I don't know if one's been confirmed, but if we do, then maybe across seasons 2 and 3, overall, it'll feel like more of a build. But as a season unto itself, doesn't have that as much. The other thing, this show does not know what to do with Pike. Really at all. I keep forgetting she's there. And there are some times, okay, so they tried to give her a focus in the first season because she had her whole sort of crisis of faith and she had to go and reestablish her bond with the Everlight. And I'm not going to say that that wasn't good material. It was okay. But I think it's very telling that the only way to give her a focus story was to literally separate her from the entire rest of the group. Whenever she is integrated with everybody else, she immediately fades into the background and I forget she's there. I think part of the thing with Pike is that the character is pretty unassuming. And so, she'll have her little moments of kicking Scanlan in the ass, saying, stopping a jerk, or, giving reassurance to Grog, and then she just kind of fades into the background again. She feels like the most ill-fitting character of the group. Like I said, previous season, for us to give you focus, we have to literally separate you from everybody else. And otherwise, it just feels like little reminders like, hey, she's here too. Eh. As for the characters who do get more of a focus, I would say that I found Grog's story the most interesting and the most energizing and compelling. Of course, I also think Grog is probably my favorite character. He kind of gets a two-part story because he's got the cursed blade that he picked up at the end of the first season, so we have to resolve that. And then we've got backstory stuff with him and his tribe that he left. So that felt like a good build. There's the stuff with the twins, with Vex and Vax, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good as well. It's decently handled. And it puts a lot of good, strong emphasis on their bond, which I appreciate, because oftentimes in these kinds of stories or shows, the sibling dynamic is taken as a given. Like, these two deeply care about each other. Why? Because they're siblings. Okay. You gonna demonstrate and explore that a bit, or are you just gonna ask us to take your word for it? And this doesn't. This does the legwork to really get us invested in not only them as characters, but them as a dynamic. And I think it does all of that pretty well. I think the stuff they do with I forget if they call it the Maiden of Crows or the Queen of Crows or the Queen of Ravens or what it is. I've been in too many campaigns where this deity has come up and it's been called something slightly different every time. It's either the Maiden or the Queen of either Rose or not Rose, Crows or Ravens. Rose or Cravens. Ay, you get what I mean. It's like some mix and match of those four elements. Maiden, Queen, Crows, Ravens. 2 out of 4 of those, they get mashed together. I thought this take on her was pretty interesting, actually. I kind of liked where that went. The dragons are a substantive threat. And I feel like they integrated the 3D sort of modeling of them better into the 2D world in this season than they did the first time. So they look a little bit better. Boy, are they intimidating. Although to a certain degree, I think maybe a little too much. Like, they did ultimately kill one at the end, but I kept feeling like stuff was being done that should be slowing this thing down more than it is. And like, I understand to make it a big threat, they're having it rally and like still be really dangerous, but like when stuff like the sword that you spoilers, by the way, if you hadn't already guessed, the stuff like where you have the sword that you say the word and it just locks into place, and they do that inside the thing's guts and then it flies off and it just tears through it. I feel like that should have done more damage than it did. It basically just left a hole that became important later, but I'm like, he should be bleeding out or at least slowing down because of how much blood loss he's got from this. And I think they actually invincibilified, sure, that's a word now, the dragons a little bit. And I kind of, I don't know, I don't like to make these notions of, well, here's how I do it, but I kind of would have rathered that I got in the sense of like, you know, these guys on their own, without the tools they have, they'd come close to killing this thing, but without these tools, they can't quite get over the hump. What it feels like instead is they just don't stand a chance, which makes a lot of the action scenes before they're making use of the tools properly. It makes them feel like, okay, this is a time filler action scene. So there's a little bit of that, but they are intimidating opponents. I think they just maybe made them a little too OP in terms of, and I don't even mean that in terms of like balancing an encounter. I just mean in terms of the stakes of any given aspect of the fight feel off because of how OP these dragons are. But it for the most part, it worked. Like that's nitpicky. And I know that's nitpicky, but I play D&D and I write fantasy stories. So like, I'm going to be nitpicky about these kinds of things. I'd apologize, but if you watch me, you should realize this is how I am. So I do think in some ways this season is better. In some ways, it is not quite as good. I don't think it has as strong a story, but I do think it does a very good job of giving more of the characters more room to breathe and more of a highlight, and softening Scanlan to the point that I don't completely hate him. Although the twist with him and like the gnome who turns out to be his daughter, that doesn't play right strictly because of the animation art style. Because these characters, unless they are gray haired and really exaggerated, they don't look old. Like, Scanlan did not look older than her. To just look at them. He just doesn't. So it made the whole revelation just weird to me. Like, narratively, it worked well enough, but just because of the visual style and how he looks like he could be anywhere from 25 to 40, and so does this other gnome who turns out is his daughter. I suppose the alternative is if he did look more his age and she did look more her age, then it would be potentially extra gross because it'd be like, dude, do you not see the age gap? Inappropriate. I still feel like he should have, even if it's not clear on the art style. I don't know. Maybe that was the compromise made, like make their ages kind of ambiguous so that audiences aren't going, how did he think it was okay to sleep with someone that much younger than him? I think maybe they were just trying to eliminate that possibility. I don't know. It was a beat that half worked in terms of giving Scanlan like it's something to impact him emotionally. Okay. I kind of don't want her to come back though. I kind of want him to just have to live with the fact that he has a daughter who wants nothing to do with him. I think that would work better for him. She didn't know you jack, dude. Like, it's good that you're like, oh, well, I want to be a better person now because I'm a dad. Cool. She don't know you a damn thing, though. Like, ever. Ever. But I don't know. We'll see. Again, if there's a third season, I haven't checked. I should have. I didn't because I'm me. In any case, those are my overall thoughts on Legend of Vox Machina Season 2. If there is a third season, I will check it out because this is pretty solid. But what did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so just come on back next time you need a break. Time to thank some Patreon backers, and in the spirit of October, I'd like to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Goddess Alita, Turok, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Oliver B, Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernobilax the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, and Rosalind Bennett. Thank you for your assistance. I don't know, I might try theming the shoutouts in the future. I don't know, we'll see. Thank you.